so funny. I was watching my video on YouTube, and I'm sure that, you know, a lot of people would think that I was only speaking about, we're gonna call it courtesanship, you know, the courtesan business, the escort business. And when I speak about the service industry, I'm specifically speaking about a a culture of extortion, you know, because a lot of people look down on that lifestyle. But, you know, to me, it's very reflecting of in the way that we go about occupation and career and making a living for ourselves. Just in the way that I should say that we socialize people who want to have a occupation that is reciprocal, right? That isn't like separate from just their life in general. And that sounds odd. I know a lot of people talk about work-life balance, like you need to have your work separated from your life. But, you know, I think that an occupation is like a lifelong thing. An occupation is something that occupies you. It's something that you do for a living. When I think about a living, it's something that you do to exist amongst others. It's something that is symbiotic, I would say, right? Like, let's say you're the farmer, you make food for everybody else, so somebody else is making clothes. That's their hobbies they do. But then sometimes they might be too tired. There's a lot of people who also can assist with that, you know, because the youth might need extra jobs and it's easy to employ them. So we're kind of just orchestrating jobs around, you know, the behaviors of humans and their stages of life, and the reality that, you know, we don't want sweatshops, but we got enough people who need jobs and labor that we can kind of interchange people out and put people in places, as well as have goods that don't require for people to be enslaved to produce. We won't need slavery to produce, right? And because a lot of that isn't just the fact of like, it's not just the aspect of people being greedy, right? Of why that's not a reality. It's more so because of the way that we consume and people not knowing how to live life within their means, truly. I shouldn't even say within their means, to live life without, we're going to say, chattel slavery, right? So yeah, it's just funny. I joke about it a lot. I was watching that video and I'm like, I'm sure that my humor went over a lot of people's heads. And I always keep saying that I'm gonna go through and kind of re-edit my videos, and I mean kind of annotate my videos as I kind of matured and have different perspectives to kind of give more commentary. Also, because I have this thing where my mom always told me that I see more and more as I watch my videos, that I do this thing called double speech, where I speak and as if I'm already in a conversation, and I assume that you already know what I'm talking about. And she would often have to, I was writing about this in my Substack, if you guys want to go check that out. She would always have to ask me to fill in the parts I hadn't said verbally, because I would have a lot of the conversation in my head. Although that was, sometimes I would have the conversation in my head and then speak to her as if we'd already had half the conversation. But a lot of times it's because I'm very empathic and and receptive, right? I'm very intuitive in that aspect. So when I speak to people, they don't have to speak and say a lot of things. I already know what they're saying, and so when we're having a conversation, there's a lot that they don't have to say, you know, because I can feel very good, and we assume that's a universal experience. Sometimes I assume that other people are picking up on certain things already that they're not, and that's just not the case. So I'm going to try to go in and really fill in the gaps in a lot of my videos, because it probably sounds a lot of schizophrenic and disorganized speech, which if I had not done enough work to stabilize myself, to organize my own function and mental processing, I probably would have slipped and fell down that road. And another thing that I want to clarify too is that in their video, you know, I'm just going to take away the connotation of it being sexual. Let's just talk about companionship in general, right? We're talking about that type of business. The joke wasn't the aspect of like, it wasn't the fact of feeling like, oh, why everyone keeps forcing me into this business. The joke that I don't understand is, why is it, if it's something that's supposed to be more easy, right? Like if it's because, you know, you're just pretty and you can have an easier life, you should, you know, you don't want to work, it's laborless, you should be in this business field. I never understand why it's something that people use as a punishment, or, you know, try to bully people into that, right? Shame people into that field. That never makes sense to me. It doesn't have to be an abusive culture, is what I'm trying to say. And, you know, what's more so that makes it abusive isn't just the culture within it, because of course there's horror stories and people are always abusive. People are abusive in that field and outside, you know what I'm saying? But a big aspect of it being such a dangerous field, you know, is the socialization around it and how people treat it. And, you know, a lot of times people are envious of the field, not just because they're disgusted, you know, and let's just take, like I said, take away the sexual aspect of it. Let's just speak about people just marketing themselves, branding themselves, you know, just to be in a companion for people, right? Most of the time people will treat them shitty because they hate the way that the labor is, the way that we civilize labor. They hate that they're being enslaved and worked to death, and not, you know, we don't have a humane system of employment, occupation, you know. They're envious. It comes from envy. So like I said, a big part of, you know, the abuse in the workforce is, in the enslavement culture, is not so much of just people being greedy and not wanting to pay people. It's because of the way that we consume. That's a big part of it. You know, what I do is I assist people in really getting more control, making more tangible their autonomy, their volition, their will, their tastes, right? So that they can have better consumption. They can consume better in a way that's more efficient, you know, so that we don't have to rely so heavily on slave labor. I think that just helps out. Then people don't have to be worked to death so much, right? Because then you don't even want the goods that are producing slave labor. So it might be slow, but I'm not the only person doing this work. And I just happen to do it in the way that I kind of constructed my system. I call it emotional and mental processing. I mean, that's what I'm doing. I assist with too, but it's called an ethical volition construction development class and perceptive defense development. That's what I do. So it just teaches you it just helps you to kind of, you know how people talk about habit creating. It takes 30 days to break a habit. That's like a theory that goes around. It's just teaching you how to reform your function and your civilization, your everyday lives, just yourself, so that your tastes change.